you have never once felt yourself fall asleep. Think about that. Every single night of your life, you have crossed the border between waking and sleeping. Not once have you caught the exact moment it happened. 1 second, you are lying there, turning over a thought. The next, it is morning. The crossing itself is invisible to you. You assume death will be different. You assume that when it finally comes, you will know. You imagine a moment of recognition, a last clear thought, a door closing that you get to watch swing shut. But the real answer is far stranger. The truth is that you may never know the moment you die. Not because death is gentle, not because it is quick, but because the one machine built to tell you, your own brain, is the very thing that is switching off. And a brain cannot narrate its own ending. It can only go quiet. Start with something most people never learn. Your brain feels no pain. It has no pain receptors of its own. Surgeons can operate on exposed brain tissue while a patient stays awake and talking, feeling nothing at all. The organ that generates every ache you have ever had cannot feel itself being touched. So the place where your awareness lives is, in a sense, numb to its own fate. When it begins to fail, there is no alarm bell wired inside it. There is only the slow loss of the things it was holding up. Now think about what knowing anything actually requires. To know you are dying, you would need a working brain to register it, to assemble the thought, and to deliver it to your awareness. But dying is precisely the process of that brain losing the power to do those things. It is like asking a candle to describe its own darkness. The reporter and the event are the same thing, collapsing together. There is an old idea here, and it came from Sigmund Freud. He argued that deep down, the unconscious mind cannot truly believe in its own death. Whenever you try to imagine being dead, you sneak yourself back into the picture. You picture the funeral, but you are watching it. You imagine the silence, but you are there to hear it. You are always still present as the observer. Freud's point was simple and unsettling. At its core, your mind has no genuine model of its own absence. It cannot rehearse a state in which it does not exist. So you carry a strange blind spot. You can understand death as a fact about other people. You cannot fully install it as a fact about yourself. And that blind spot is not an accident. Decades later, an anthropologist named Ernest Becker built an entire theory around it. In his book, The Denial of Death, he argued that almost everything you do, your ambitions, your beliefs, your need to be remembered, is quietly powered by the mind refusing to accept its own ending. Researchers who came after him, studying what they called terror management, ran experiment after experiment showing the same pattern. Remind people of their mortality, even subtly, and their behavior shifts. They cling harder to their groups, their values, their sense of meaning. Your mind does not just fail to picture its death, it actively builds a life designed to look away from it. Here is where it gets stranger. You already live slightly behind the present moment. Your conscious experience of right now is not actually happening now. It is a reconstruction, stitched together a fraction of a second after the fact. In the 1980s, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet ran a series of careful experiments on the timing of awareness. His work suggested that the brain takes time, sometimes around half a second, to build the conscious version of an event before you become aware of it. By the time you feel a moment, your brain has already processed it, dressed it, and handed it to you slightly late. Let that settle in. The now you are experiencing is a small, smooth lie, a helpful one. Your brain hides the delay so well that life feels seamless, but the present you live in is always a memory, freshly arrived. So what happens at the end, when the brain runs out of time to build the next moment? There is no final frame. There is no closing announcement delivered to your awareness. The construction simply stops mid-sentence. And because awareness is the thing being constructed, there is no one left inside to notice that it stopped. The lights do not dim while you watch. The watcher is part of the light. Think about how that compares to everything else you fear. You fear pain because you can feel it. You fear loss because you can witness it. But the thing about your own death is that it removes the very instrument you would use to experience it. There is no version of you sitting in an empty theater, noticing that the film has ended. The theater, the screen, and the audience are all the same flickering thing. This is why the question is not really what does death feel like. The deeper question is whether there is anyone home to feel the final feeling at all. And that depends entirely on what the brain does in its last working minutes. For a long time, scientists assumed those minutes were a quiet fade. Activity drops, oxygen runs out, the signal flattens into a line, a gentle switching off, a slow dimming toward nothing. Then the data refused to cooperate. At the University of Michigan, a researcher named Jimo Borjigin was studying the dying brain. In one set of experiments, she and her team monitored the brains of animals at the moment the heart stopped. They expected to see activity collapse. Instead, in the seconds after cardiac arrest, they recorded a sudden, powerful surge of brain activity, a flood of high-frequency gamma waves, the same kind of activity linked to intense, vivid, conscious experience. The dying brain didn't whisper. For a moment, it roared. Years later, Borjigin's team saw signals like this in dying human patients too. As the heart failed, regions of the brain associated with conscious processing lit up in a final organized burst. We do not yet know what that burst feels like from the inside. We may never be able to ask the only witnesses, but it raises a haunting possibility. The end may not be a fade to black. It may be a flare. Why would a dying brain do this? No one is fully certain. One idea is that as oxygen vanishes, the brain's careful systems of restraint break down all at once, releasing a final cascade of signaling. The chemistry that normally keeps your experience orderly lets go, and everything fires together. A last total firework of the mind, a burst of meaning with no one guaranteed to be left to read it. And here is the cruel twist. Even if that final surge is the most vivid experience of your entire life, brighter than your first love, sharper than your worst fear, you would have no way to carry it back. Memory needs a brain that survives to store it. The most intense moment you ever live might also be the one moment you can never keep. This brings us to the people who have stood on that threshold and come back. In 1975, a physician named Raymond Moody collected dozens of accounts from patients who had been clinically dead and then revived. He noticed they kept describing the same things: a sense of peace, a feeling of floating above the body, a tunnel, a light, a rapid review of their lives. He gave the pattern a name that stuck: the near-death experience. He did not claim to prove what it meant. He simply showed that it was real, repeatable, and strangely consistent across very different people from very different lives. Decades of research followed. At the University of Virginia, a psychiatrist named Bruce Grayson spent much of his career studying these accounts with scientific care, even building a standardized scale to measure them. What unsettled him most were the cases that did not fit easily into simple explanations. Patients who reported clear, structured awareness during periods when their brains should have been incapable of producing it. Some described details they seemingly had no way of knowing. He did not insist on a single answer. He insisted only that the question was real and that science had been too quick to look away from it. And then there is Sam Parnia, a critical care doctor who decided to study the question head on. He led a large investigation called the AWARE study, examining what people experience during cardiac arrest, when the heart has stopped, and by every old definition, the patient has died. His work suggested something deeply strange. In some cases, awareness did not seem to vanish the instant the heart stopped. Patients later described moments, even details of the room, from a time when their brains were supposed to be offline. Parnia began arguing that death is not a single sharp instant, but a process, one that may be, at least for a brief window, more reversible and more conscious than we ever assumed. Notice what all of this circles back to. Every clue points at the same uncomfortable shape. The boundary you imagine, alive on one side, dead on the other, a clean line you would surely feel yourself cross, may not exist the way you picture it. Death is not a door slamming. It is a dimmer being, slowly turned, a process unfolding, with awareness flickering in ways the dying person can never report and the living can only guess at. Think about how strange that makes the word dead. You treat it like a switch with two positions: on, off, alive, gone. But your cells do not die all at once. Your organs do not stop in the same second. Even your brain shuts down in stages, region by region, some parts going dark while others briefly blaze. Somewhere inside that staggered shutdown is the moment people call your death. And no one, not the doctors, not the machines, and least of all you, can point to the exact instant it truly happened. So why don't you know when you're dead? Because knowing is a thing a living brain does. And the moment that brain can no longer do it, there is no separate you standing outside it, waiting to receive the news. You're not a passenger who survives the crash of the vehicle. You are the motion of the vehicle itself. When it stops, the motion does not go somewhere else. It simply stops being. This sounds frightening, but look closer and something softer appears underneath it. You have already practiced this every night of your life. Each time you fall asleep, you let go of awareness without terror, without a final frame, without ever catching the moment of release. You do it casually. You do it expecting to return, and the not knowing has never once hurt you. The gap you fear so much is a gap you have already crossed thousands of times. And on the other side of it, you simply woke up to a new morning with no memory of the dark in between. That is the strange mercy hidden in all of this. The same blind spot that keeps you from knowing your own death is the blind spot that has made every night of sleep painless. You were never meant to witness the edge. Your mind was built to live inside the moments, not to stand outside them and watch them end. Maybe that changes how you hold the time you have, not because the end is near, but because you finally understand that you will never feel it arrive. There is no countdown ticking inside you. There is only this moment, and the next one your brain is already quietly building, and the one after that. The only place you have ever truly lived is now. The edge will take care of itself the way it always has. So here is the quiet truth you can carry out of all this. You will probably never feel the instant you die, for the very same reason you have never once felt yourself fall asleep.